Hey,
Hey, good morning.
good morning. Good morning. Got the
Welcome
coffee.
to Playing in Sandboxes. I'm Jay, one of your co-hosts.
Hey, I'm Judd, he, him, and I am the other co-host. Whew.
I know it's early. It's 4:30 here. I'm in Kansas
Yeah,
City.
yeah, yeah. It's a little after 6 here.
Sorry, it's 5. It's a little
Yeah,
after 5. See, I don't even know
yeah.
what time it is.
Nope. That's okay. That's okay. That said, um, this is a time of day that I should probably take advantage of more. Like I have to leave for work at like 7:15. If I woke
Hmm.
up at 5, there's just so much I could get done. Anyway, I'd have to get to bed early. Sandboxes, Jay. I feel like we've got two games. We both are running games right now
Yes,
where they're taking place in sandboxes. You've run dozens of sessions, Twilight 2000, and
I have.
it's
Yeah,
the new
yeah.
Free League one. Yeah.
It is. It is. It's way different. I remember playing it in the 90s,
Hmm.
and I like this version way better. And I have to warn folks, it's not a war action game. It's
Right.
a survival sandbox, and I love it.
Nice. Nice. Uh,
And
no, you go.
and you're playing Dolmenwood, right?
Yeah, we're about 3 sessions into a Dolmenwood game. It's the first. I wouldn't say it's the first. I think it's the first time I'm actually using all the tools that a sandbox gives me, and I
Right.
think Dolmenwood is just very well supported. Um, I'm curious how it's going to be different when I'm not on PDFs and I'm working with books.
Right.
There might be more page flipping. There might be less. And also when I get my Miro board kind of well set up so that everything is kind of DM screened in front of me. But right now, I was thinking like, all right, what are the tools I want to talk about? And there are tools in the monster book, there are tools in the campaign book, and there are tools in the player book. They're all there. Like it's, and I think eventually we will internalize like the camping
Right.
and traveling rules.
Right.
And so I won't have to look at those as much. But it's a lot. Yeah. But it's fun. And
No, it
there's
is
nothing,
fun.
yeah. What is different about Twilight 2000, the current version, the Free League version, than the one that you remember?
Tools. And we didn't plan this conversation this way, but it is the tools in this version
Okay.
that weren't existent in the original version.
Okay.
And I think it's been decades, so I think we have, in general, in the hobby, better tools for managing sandbox play in
Hmm.
addition to just regular campaign play.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things I dig the most is I think when we talk about sandboxes, folks think about generators, random tables, things like that, right? So there are random tables, but they've also taken the next step, and a lot of those tables become cards. And so instead of having
Oh,
to
nice.
roll on a table, right, you just shuffle the deck for the day, and I pull the cards I need for the different shifts or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
and all the information I need, for the most part, are on the cards, and I'm off and running.
Cool.
Um,
Do you do that? Do you do the polls at the table, or do you do them like pre-game?
so for in the beginning, I would do them pre-game. I'm a software engineer, and I like to
Yeah.
small scale test first, so I would
Yeah. Yeah.
pre-game, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anymore, I trust the tools, and if I do something different, I don't do a pull per shift. So there's like 4 shifts in the day. What I will do is I'll pull 5 cards for the day and treat them kind of like a tarot reading of what might happen that day.
Oh,
And that
neat.
way I'm picking the most dramatic card for the shift rather than it being straight random for that shift. Does that
Oh,
make sense?
okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so I feel
Nice.
like better I get better options for the narrative of that day based on what we're already doing, right? I
Yeah.
can fit in or change around some things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then that 5th card is a throwaway card, right? Um, if I have a card I don't like, I have one I can fall back on without having to repull.
Cool.
Uh, but I think there's
Cool.
some magic in pulling right there at the table with everybody, right? They see me do it, right? And
Oh,
you can
right.
feel, yeah, folks are like, oh, he's grabbing cards out the deck, right?
Oh, right.
And that's fantastic. I
It's
like
got
that.
weight. It's got
Yeah,
weight. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've kind of like kept it behind the screen, so I haven't had that. Uh, had that moment. That's interesting. Neat.
Yeah, I'm a big poker player, so a lot of what I do is all the non-verbal stuff, the
Right.
feel, the table, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Yeah, I think the cards make that easy, right? Because I just pick up the deck and I start pulling, and I'm very dramatic about it so people see it, right?
Right. But are you playing online? You playing live?
So now I'm playing live, but I've played online and I've used Foundry VTT, so there's a deck there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You can hide it, but I don't. I make it public so everybody can see it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, definitely. Cool. That's awesome. Do you have some polls that stand out, some moments, some yeah.
Yeah, there was early in our online game, there's a card about an empty gas station, right? And it was perfect because they had just hotwired a vehicle and they didn't have a whole lot of fuel in it.
Yeah.
And so they thought, hey, we should probably stop, but it's probably a trap, right?
Right.
And so let's park the vehicle far away, walk it in, and see what we see, right? And they're right, it was a trap, and it was messy, right? It was a messy trap. But out of that, they ended up finding like 3 orphans. And so again, your safety tools, lines and veils, your X card, all that stuff is important up front.
Yep.
Because all that stuff is in there.
Yeah.
And those 3 kids, I think we spent the next 10, 15 sessions trying to find homes for those orphans. They kept them.
Yeah.
And
cool.
That is funny that players latch onto that and that becomes a thing, right? And it's just a random card.
Yeah.
I didn't put that in there. It wasn't a plot.
And the card said gas station, orphans, trap. Like the card gave you all that.
Yeah, so the card gives you the encounter, and they there's some math there. If you have this many PCs, it's this many hostiles or whatever, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right. There's some, and a lot of it is icons, right? Some cards don't trigger unless it's nighttime. It doesn't happen unless you're on the road and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it's like a magic card, like magic cards are, and then you've got like a blurb text kind of laying out the scenario for you.
Okay.
You can get all the stats for the PCs and NPCs out of the book, but it pretty much lays out a nice, open, movable or floatable encounter. But this one was kind of set at a gas station, and I'm like, that's perfect.
Nice.
So yeah,
I've got a favorite random encounter at Dolmenwood that mirrors that one nicely. So I'll definitely bring it up now. Where they were in. I don't want to give Dolmenwood spoilers too much, but they were in a hex that had some kind of monster in a pit somewhere out there, but they weren't like looking for it. They were just kind of moving through. And so I rolled a random encounter, and it was a bunch of goblins. And I rolled it right there because they were moving in a direction I didn't anticipate them moving in. And I looked at the monster book, and in the monster book, they've got like different encounters. They've got like 4 different encounters. And one of them is, hey, the goblins, I think it was like 11 goblins, and they've got a human baby. And I was like, oh, I like this. Yeah. And so there were also like worms in the area. So like the goblins are like cooking like 4-foot long worms over the fire.
Right.
And there's another thing that came up. So one of the other, so there are a bunch of things you roll when you roll an encounter. You roll the encounter, you roll to see who's surprised, right? So the goblins were surprised, which I just took it to mean they don't know you're there, right? It's getting to be dusk. They don't know you're out there. So if you decide to just like move by quietly, they probably won't see you. There's also a distance thing, but I didn't do the distance thing. So they could see into the camp, and the goblins are like roasting 4-foot long worms over a fire. And there's a baby toddling around, and every once in a while they like feed the baby worm. Every time the baby would eat a worm, they'd all cheer and be like, yeah, baby, eat that worm. It's good for you. You're going to grow so strong. And like, they're just like doing little like weird fairy goblin things, right? Because it's very fairy goblin more than, and my players look at it and they're like, here's the other tip. Here's maybe the most important detail. One of the goblins says, guys, the Lord of the Pit isn't going to eat the baby, right? And everyone was like, no, the Lord of the Pit loves the baby. Like the Lord of the Pit loves babies. It's going to raise the baby as its own. The Lord of the Pit would never eat the baby. What are you talking about? And he was like, I just wanted to make sure I had concerns. If you all think it's not going to eat the baby, then fine, it's not going to eat the baby.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, I think I've given you guys enough information. What are you doing? And they're like, we're moving on. We're going to keep going. We're going to go make camp somewhere else. This is nonsense. There's 11 of them. Again, rolled randomly.
Right.
Not for balance, not for, hey,
right.
This is a good encounter. You'll just use up some of their resources. No. It was like there were 11 goblins and a baby. They were not, and I don't know how I think that might have gone kind of rough on them, depending on the dice. And yeah, they just were like, no, we're done. I think we're moving on.
No, we're good.
And one of the players was like, am I the one who cares about this baby? No, I'm gone. No, we're done.
Wow.
And so they just moved on, which I think is a fun part of random encounters and these kind of hex tools, is you don't have to care about everything. Right. Like I didn't like my metaphor for like things I really want my players to bite on is like, oh, I've got a Lego goblin camp made behind me, and if you don't go to the goblin camp, I spent 4 months making this this Lego goblin camp for nothing, right? Like the fire flickers a little bit. Like I've got like a thing where the fire flickers, and I've got a little Lego baby toddling around and Lego worms. But I did not. I was like, yeah, it's a random encounter, folks. I made this 10 seconds ago. Like, you do not, that baby will go to where it goes. Like, it's just, and there might be a thing that happens because of that, but I'm not like out to get them or to like prove consequences. But I think that is a fun part of it, is that you can create really fun moments that give the world depth. And you can just decide to move on and be like, nope, not today.
Right, not today.
Which is cool. What's up?
Do you find your players move on from encounter to encounter, or do they feel like they need to run an encounter down? Is it easy for them to disengage and keep moving on, or moving in a different direction?
Yeah, they decide to move until they decide not to move.
Okay.
So here's another encounter. Here's another example of something that happened. I pre-rolled an encounter like a week before, and I got these fairy body swappers called I think they're called like body shifters or something. But anyway, they're fairy doppelgangers. They take the shape of someone that they're of someone. They kill that person. They take their stuff and they move on. So I was like, all right, there are these folks in the area of this hex, and there's an inn there, and these fairy shifter these body snatchers need more bodies. They need to like move on to a new shape eventually. So they're probably going to be at the inn where the players are going to go. And so I just like came up with a story. Like basically I was like, all right, so I looked at the encounters because they had like encounter ideas, and one of them is like, oh, they're taking some adventurer shapes, like another band of adventurers. So I was like, cool. I rolled up the band of adventurers that they took. I also rolled all of their treasure randomly. Like it was just a lot of lonely fun where like I rolled their treasure and they had a bag of devouring totally randomly. And I was like, oh, well, I know what they do with the bodies they don't want now.
Right.
Like they just shove it in the bag. So I was looking at the party and I was like, they'll probably take the shape of the knight and the thief and the fighter, and like not the magical people. So because that's easier to act like that they really are them. So there was a knight, and I just happened to make the knight from one of the players' like areas. And the player had a thing in her backstory where she had killed someone in her hometown. She had killed a knight. So she was like antsy. And then one of the other random encounter that had happened is they had run into a group of 13 bandits on the road and made friends with them. So they're like
Okay.
traveling with 13 bandits. It's just like, I love it when these things just start bouncing off each other, right?
Right,
And
right.
that's what ends up happening. So they're traveling with 13 bandits. So the body snatchers were happy to ignore the players. The players were happy to ignore the body snatchers until my friend's elf comes in, and he's in the common room where all of the bandits are sleeping in a puppy pile. And he's like, "Hey, folks, come on, let's go. We've got to go ambush that caravan that's holding our friend." And like, I said that this place is filled with like shepherds, like springtime is coming.
Right.
So one of the shepherds goes to the knight and is like, "These guys are bandits. Like, they don't just look like bandits. They're bandits. They said they're going to ambush a caravan. You got to do something, or I'm going to go to the local lord and say that you didn't do anything." And so the body snatchers are like, "I don't want the lord here. So I'm going to go out." Like, in my mind, the body snatchers are like, "I'm going to go out and just try to chill this out." And so the knight comes out, the shepherd comes with him. It's like, "Those are the ones who are gonna ambush the caravan."
Right.
And my friend, the woman who married me, she's also my friend, who's playing the thief, is like, "I can't have this." Like, I stab him in the back, and then like it all just popped off, and it was just because of all these random encounters just kind of bouncing off each other. And I wasn't like, "Oh well," it wasn't a deal where I was like, "Oh, I did so much work, I want this encounter to happen." It was a deal where I was like, "Yeah, this is what's like." It seems obvious to me that this is what happens, and it was cool. It was a lot of fun. It was interesting that this thief backstabbed a knight, and then it became a fairy creature, and the thief's reaction was, "Oh no, I just killed someone, and I don't know if I killed the right person now."
Right.
Because I don't have a problem really killing a knight, but I don't know what this fairy creature's deal is. And it was interesting. It made the violence interesting in a way. What happened with the orphans? Like what?
So what's funny is my next question, or where I was going to move to, is how do these encounters connect, right?
Yeah.
Because I have the same phenomenon, is that we talk about random encounters, but what I'm finding is they start to meld, and then as humans, we're making a narrative or a pattern between them, joining them all, getting the story at the end.
Yeah.
I think the players at the player level realize, hey, we're PCs, and wherever we go, there's violence, there's danger, it's bad. We can't keep these kids around, but we can't leave them out here because it's feral, it's bad.
Yeah.
There was a German, and these kids are like between 8 and 12. I think it was a French boy, a German boy, and an American girl. She was the youngest. And as they were moving through, the Twilight 2000 takes place in Poland, and as they're moving through the countryside, mostly rural areas, they make friends with a small town-size encampment.
Yeah.
And the leader there, in their exchange of things, they bring up, "Hey, you want some kids, right? We have some kids we can give you, right?"
Yeah.
And they have a conversation, and the Polish guy says, "Look, I'll take the 2 boys, but I can't take the girl. That's a bad deal, right?
Oof.
One, she's American, and we the things are bad right now, right? The boys I can put in homes, they'll adopt, and everything's cool, but I can't really." Right. So they were stuck keeping the American girl for some time. This game we played 50 sessions, right? Easy 50 sessions, right?
Yeah.
They ended up picking up another Polish kind of senior citizen kind of guy. A bunch of different other things happened in between, but both those, the senior citizen guy and the orphan girl, ended up getting kidnapped.
Oh no.
Yeah, and so we spent like the next 10 sessions they're chasing, trying to get their people back. And again, this is not a plot. These are random encounters that kind of got tied together, and
they care about it.
And they cared. Yeah, I'm like, wait a minute, it's almost winter time. We were talking about going to the city for the winter, but now we're chasing this guy to get our people back. I'm like, they're NPCs. You don't have to chase them, right? And I'm doing all the devil's advocate stuff. We could do these other
Right.
things, right? And they're like, no, this is not right. And there was some party player conversation going on, right?
Yeah.
And some deals made, and they decided, okay, we're doing this. We got to go find this guy, run him down, Thomas More, and get our people back.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking about the actual tools themselves. Like so one of the things I feel like when people talk about random encounters and how they don't like them,
right.
As often happens in gaming conversations, what they talk about, I think number one, random encounters are poorly named. So there's that. We're living on the legacy of what's come before us. But I think also what is going on is people think about poorly made random encounters, and as our friend Strash says, random encounter tables are world building. So if they're good, then they'll say something about the setting,
right,
and they'll reflect that. And if they're not, then it feels random. Then like that word makes sense. But if it's good, anyway, I think when people are criticizing random tables, what I find is either when they're poorly used or when they are poorly made. And then, and then it feels just like it says. It feels random and not like, integrated or something. I don't know. There's got to be. I like calling them inspirational tables very often.
So one of the things Twilight 2000 does that I'd like to see more often is you pull this random card in the GM section. It will tell you. It says explicitly. As you pull that card, right, all the players have 2 flags on their sheet. One is their big dream that they're supposed to articulate, and it's mechanized, right? You get XP for certain things off of that. And the other is your moral code. And again, that's also mechanized, right?
Nice.
And so if you've got 4 players, you got 8 of those things, right? And so the GM section says, as you pull that random card, think about those flags and figure out how you can weave that into right the card, right?
That's nice.
So that's one thing. I like that, right? The second thing is it says as you're implementing this card, right? Think about the other factions that already are in play that we've seen already. Does this card fit one of those factions? Maybe it's not so random, right? Maybe it's a faction making a move, right?
Right.
And this is that manifestation of that faction's action or that influence, right? Especially if we've interacted with them again, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it'll do that. I feel like it's promoting that random event to something that we've seen before or that we had a relationship with or a situation with.
Yeah.
And again, all of those stack up to they have these things called adventure sites. And so you can, as the GM, start to weave these things in this direction, and these folks end up at this site where an adventure happens. But it doesn't have to be that way. You could run your whole game just weaving these encounters together.
Yeah.
So I like that, and I'd like to see that happen more often in sandbox games,
where it gets where there are tools to link it to the player and what they care about.
Right.
And the players probably don't see that, right? The players aren't saying like, "Oh, you're trying to get me." Like they just
they don't. What I find, and this is why I asked you about, do your players do they pick and choose, right? Because in the rules for Twilight 2000, the cards come up, and most of the time the players have ways to avoid an encounter, right? But unless I tell them or they've read the books, a lot of times I'll have to say, hey, look, I don't have a plot, right? There's no arc here. You don't have to follow anything, right?
Yeah.
I'm following you. Don't feel like I'm throwing stuff out there for you to run down. There's no adventure.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'll have to say that a few times before they get used to creating their own agenda or engaging as they will.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you feel like they get it, or do you feel, or is there some like player guilt of like, oh, we've got to do something, like poor Jay is.
Oh, that happens. Hard. Yeah. So, but again, when I see that, I'll say, hey, first of all, right? There's no plot, right? Whatever's happening is happening. I didn't write. I don't have, right? But then I'll say, so it's whatever you want to do, right? But then they think about the situation, and sometimes that happens. It's a guilt kind of thing. There's a weird guilt thing. We have a guy that came out of a random encounter. We called him the world's most interesting man. So a lot of times,
I was gonna
right,
ask
you have
about this.
NPCs,
Yeah.
and you're like, what's he look like, right? And usually I'll pull from something that we all are familiar with. And in this case, it was a guy that looks like that guy, right? He's German, but he can speak Russian and he speaks Polish, right?
Okay.
And he's got 2 teens with him, a girl and a boy. And everyone's kind of gathered around this helicopter crash, and the players show up because they're also looking to scavenge from this helicopter crash. And in my mind, this is a throwaway encounter, right? We're working through some rule stuff. And when this is done, we're going to walk away and move on to other things.
Yeah.
The players decided that the world's most interesting man is a bad uncle and we need to save the kids. This was in their heads, right? I said nothing other than what I just told you.
Right.
Here's an older looking guy. He's got 2 kids with him. He's got like a satchel, right? The 2 kids have rifles, right? And they're moving toward the helicopter. That's it. That's all I've ever said. Yeah, in their head, this is a bad uncle. We got to save the kids, right?
What's going on?
Right. And I hadn't determined anything other than that. But at that moment, I decided, no, he's the good uncle, right? These kids are his wife's kids, and they're all trying to find, right, the wife and the rest of the family.
Yeah, yeah. Because if he was a bad uncle, why would the kids be armed? Like, I feel like a bad uncle wouldn't empower the kids to. I mean, rifles are not empowering kids in the general world. But in a post-apocalyptic Twilight 2000 world,
right?
Everybody's got to pick up their thing and do it, right? You got
to carry your weight. Yeah,
carry your weight. So, I feel like a bad uncle probably wouldn't be arming their kids, or would be sending them in, and he stands back, right?
Right.
Like there would have been other signs. That's interesting.
Right.
I mean, I feel like we see that in other non-hex crawl games where there's like I think of Dogs in the Vineyard when I would run the same town, a half a dozen times. And sometimes you'd run a town and someone would just have a reaction.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's your thing. Like,
that's you.
This is therapy. Like you need to work that out. You need to work that out. Like for some reason you decided that this person was the guilty party. And there's no data to back that up. I don't know
where did that come from?
And that's fine. Like I feel like in the Dogs in the Vineyard game, I think one of the things that game taught us is like, don't judge. Like you don't judge what your players do. You just play the consequences.
Right. You run with it. Yeah.
And that's very much in line with the hex crawly stuff. So we're just chewing up time. I feel like, and I think you touched on it with their code and the stuff from their character sheet linking up to the random encounters and to the world.
Yeah.
I feel like, so one of the things I thought of when I got Dolmenwood, and I'm playing Dolmenwood straight out of the box and I quite like it.
Okay.
But I looked at the setting and I was like, man, I could run the hell out of this with Sorcerer. And not only that, I don't know if I would change much. Like, I don't think I would change much from my side of it. I think the random encounters would work. I think the hex material would work. I just think it's interesting. I think there is interesting potential with sandboxes with very different types of games and games where I mean, I think something that the OSR and a lot of old Forge era indie RPGs agree on is that emergent play is really great.
Yes,
I agree. And you don't want to have a big story pre-written. And little do they all know. Oh, you all agree on that, by the way. You don't know it. You don't know that.
And they're all chasing it, right? They're all chasing it.
Because something got called narrativism, and you all think that means that the GM has a narrative or something. I don't know, whatever. We don't need to go down that road, but I think they're interesting. I'm interested to see those tools work with a lot of different types of games. I think it's kind of neat.
No, I agree.
I think there's good stuff out there. But what interests me with Dolmenwood is there are so many different parts, right? It's like the hex content, the travel camping rules, the
Right.
random encounters.
Right.
And that's not even talking about the adventures where people are like, oh,
Right.
you can stick the module in this hex. And there's actually an adventure site in this hex.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like all those parts are just kind of like in this cool whirlwind. I would have made a really terrible, if I had a little bit more time, I think I would have made a really bad diagram so we could see like the whirlwind of it all and how they all bang into each other. But it's interesting. So you've got the deck with Twilight 2000. What else? What else is communicating setting? Like, is there just like, hey, in this part of Poland, this is what's happening? Like, is there?
Yeah, so you get a rough timeline, right,
Okay.
of history.
Okay.
I think I think we don't absorb that up front, right? I think the situation is so strong, and folks are trying to survive, right? There's scarcity that we start to, as players, we look back at the timeline in the history after we've played several sessions to get a feel for, right? I feel like
the situation was so strong. I want to come back to that, but the magic. Let's get to the magic.
Yeah. I think the magic is those player flags, those 2 player flags. What's your big dream, right? And what's your moral code? And because I think that not only ties you or helps me tie the encounter to you and you to the encounter, it also, when the players disagree, right, they're having a player conversation, but they're referencing those 2 flags, and they solve their issues. We don't have to roll dice on it.
Nice.
No one's posturing at the table, right? They're talking through it, and then they get to a thing, and then they're moving on to. Because I was going to ask you, what keeps your Dolmenwood players together? And moving forward.
Well, I mean, after what is it? 15 years of playing Burning Wheel, I think we've got a pretty good idea of situation. So like I was like, hey folks, let's play Dolmenwood. I think I'll run this adventure, is how it started. And then we started talking, and these players are very like anti-authoritarian and if there is a king on the table, they're probably gonna like knife them. And so I was like, you know what? Like, a Sherwood Forest Robin Hood vibe would really fit in Dolmenwood. Like, that would work. So why don't we say we're like a band of outlaws? And then like through that conversation, I was like, hey, you know what? Here's how we'll start the adventure. We will start the adventure. A friend of yours was wintering in this castle over here. You folks were separate from him over there, but you've heard that he was caught doing some kind of crime. We're not sure what, and he's being brought east to be beheaded. And you've got to catch that caravan. You know it's going to take these main roads. You're pretty sure it's going to take these main roads, and you've got to catch that caravan along the way and free your friend. And like, that's how we're starting. So it was impetus to travel, and it was impetus to be thinking about the setting a little bit. And it was a reason to stay together. Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like I said, I think in Twilight 2000, for sure, those player flags. As a GM, those player flags make things go. It makes it easy for me to run a session as I'm pulling encounters. And then I feel like if you stay with it 3 or 4 sessions in, the situation starts hot. It keeps cooking. And then they have all kinds of things. Even if they're trying to be indifferent and hide, right? They still need food. They still need water. There's checking out an abandoned farm. There's a horse, there's a goat, they're in the pen. The rest of the farm is abandoned. Most of it's been burnt down. 3 players go to check it out. They're like, okay, cool. We can't find anything else here. We'll just take the goat and the horse. A big old Jeep rolls up. It's got 6 Soviet soldiers in it, right? They get out. The players are like, we're just going to hide. We're going to lay low or hide, and we'll wait for them to leave. I'm a big fan of using the initiative system in whatever game that has them, because you get into a tense spot and players say a thing, right? They said, we're all just going to lay down here and hide. But I find if you walk through, even if there's not going to be a combat, if there's an initiative system and you engage it, because I did, and the players all got to go first, One player's like, no, I'm getting behind this rock, and the other one's like, I'm gonna keep my eyes on the one behind the rock, and I'm gonna hide behind this tree. The third player's like, no, we need that goat, and started shooting at the Soviets. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah,
No,
yeah.
you're
I'm
risking
like,
your
I
life for
hear
a
you.
goat. You're risking your
Yes,
life
that's why
for
I
a
do that. I'm
goat.
like, I hear all three of you say, yes, we're doing this thing, but I don't believe it. So here's the initiative. Let's
Yeah,
walk through the initiative and let's see how it goes,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
And so, yeah, it's stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
From that, right, that last 3 or 4 sessions that they're dealing with that aftermath.
yeah,
And so I find the more sessions that you have in, sometimes we'll play a session and I won't pull any cards. I don't need to add anything new because
right,
they're dealing with so much of this other stuff, right?
right.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like sandbox games become their own thing. You get your own storyline. You
Yeah,
have several through lines happening.
yeah, yeah,
The more time you have in with it.
yeah. Situations I feel like are important, and we should talk about what that means. And because Dolmenwood has like a ton of them, right? There are like a bunch of there's like an army hidden out in the forest that's like
Right.
ready to take a castle. There is there's a Bregel lord who's like wants to become a powerful necromancer. There's just like a ton of things brewing,
Nice.
and there's also a this evil in quotes fairy prince who was exiled 350 years ago, and he wants back in. So there's all of these things kind of brewing, and some might become the campaign, some might become background noise, but like
Right.
having situation on the map where things are kind of moving on their own is super important. And I feel like this game does that real well, which is nice. Is the biggest situation in Twilight 2000 like there's been a nuclear war and resources are slim, or is there other stuff cooking out there?
Yeah, I think that's the background situation, right? Everyone's in the aftermath of these nukes going off, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
most of the electrical grid is down. We can't communicate. You've got these units of militaries across different nations, right? We're all in Poland, but they can't effectively do anything because they can't really communicate, right? So some of them, we had a place called Barnestown. Uh, a unit of Americans partnered up with a Polish town, and they decided we will provide protection for this town.
Yeah.
Right, help do all the civilian things, and we'll partner up this way.
Yeah.
Until we figure out what happens next, right? So you have things like that. You have some units that decide, no, we still got to win this war, right?
Oh, wow.
And they're conscripting and trying to grow their unit out, right? So all that's in the background.
Got it.
But there is scarcity, and it's reflected in the rules. Like, out of 4 shifts in the day, right, you need to eat and have water, or conditions happen to your character, right?
Right.
So a lot of time is making sure we have rations and we've got water. I'm a bad, evil GM, and I will add NPCs to your party because I know they consume water and rations too, right? And now we got to figure out.
Are there tools for keeping track of that, or is it?
Yeah, so it's on the character sheets. They have them, and you kind of just mark them off as you have them. And I play gentleman's honesty or rules, right? So you mark it off, right?
Yeah.
Because the other plays I find will also help you keep track. In the early games, everyone's trying to hoard their own, right? And they want to make sure if I got to mark one off, I want to make sure you, Jed, you're marking yours off too.
Yeah.
But after a while, they start to cooperate and realize, right, we got to carry all this stuff, and so let's just kind of keep it all together.
Yep.
So the early games is mostly moving so they can at least keep water and food on hand.
Yeah.
Weather, right, has issues. It gets cold and you got to stay warm and that kind of stuff. So a lot of it is, what is it, Maslow's that pyramid of needs? Yes. And so they're engaging with that. But then other situations, like I said, like the orphan comes up. They ended up being allies with the world's most interesting man, and they go to his rescue at some point.
Okay.
All kinds of different things like that.
Cool.
The game itself has a few meta plots or situations you can grab. You don't have to.
Yeah.
And then they have adventure sites like Krakow is a big city that folks go to.
Yeah, I was going to ask about adventure sites. That's on your notes. Yep.
Yeah, so they have that too. That you can go there, and they have situations happening inside that place, right?
Got it.
And that's really
cool. Nice. Yeah, and the other, I was just looking at like our favorite. We wrote down some of our favorite random encounter stories. And another one is like that I liked was just there was just like a herd of deer that the players came up on. Again, I rolled. It was they kind of took them by surprise, and like I've done that, like I've been out walking, the dog, and come upon 16 deer, and we all kind of look at each other and are like, now what? And then the dog barks and they all scatter. So yeah, it's just like cool little moments that I feel like give the world depth and meaning, and all that is a lot.
No, that's a good point. We were talking about these encounters in the deck. Everything's not all bad, right? Sometimes the sun, there's an encounter where the sun comes out, right?
Yeah.
And the skies open up and it's kind of nice and everything.
Oh, nice.
And mechanically, you get some bennies back for that day.
Oh,
right?
Wow. Cool.
Right. So not all the encounters are horrible, bad kind of things.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And that's something I want to like about old school play that I feel like is a tool that doesn't get used often enough or doesn't get talked about a whole lot is the monster reaction table where when you, and it's called the monster reaction table. I just use it for everything. Sometimes, and sometimes it's real clear how someone's going to act, right? Like they've got something going on. They've got something they want or they need. And so how they're going to be. Right. But other times it's just, you just are like, I don't know. Let's see what the dice say. Maybe this is a friendly monster. Like who knows? Maybe this is a friendly troll under the bridge. I have no idea. And that can make things really interesting about, why, most often you get like kind of confused, kind of curious, maybe. But the monster reaction table is a huge one. And I think a big part of making these tables and the sandbox work and the random encounters work is it's not trying to get, if you're coming from a 5e background where you have to get in 8 fights a day,
right?
It's not what this is. Like, it's not an 8 fight a day thing. And so, I think prepping those players as like, hey, this is not something you have to shoot at if you don't want to.
Right.
Unless you decide it's a bad uncle, and then you're going to do what you're going to do. But yeah. I think that's an important part of it is that every encounter does not need to be a fight encounter.
Right.
As a matter of fact, thinking your way around fights is sometimes fine. And sometimes you just got to stab somebody because you think they're a bad knight and they can't come from a bad place and a bad lord. And so that's cool. But yeah, it doesn't have to be every time. It doesn't have to be, it's not the fight of the night. It's not, we need to get so many in during the session. So an important, I think, distinction in the whole thing. So Jay, you've got a note here, the still. I feel like that's the only thing we haven't talked about yet.
Oh yeah. The players built a still.
Yeah.
I see we hit our 10-minute warning, so I'll keep this short.
Yeah.
They built a still. It took several sessions and resources, right? This is their own agenda. They did this of their own accord.
They decided we need to make whiskey. Like they just decided.
Yeah. Well, the alcohol powers vehicles.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
It's also good trading material, right?
Right. That makes making a lot more sense now. Okay.
Yeah. So they got it built, right? Then they found a new place that they'd like to settle down and live with some neighbors, and they're all kind of looking out for each other, right?
Yeah.
Then they brought in an American that was from the intelligence agencies who was on the run. And he straight up told them, hey, look, I got some bad heat chasing me, so I'm not going to stay long, right? And that heat showed up, right? And they bailed, leaving all their stuff. They left that place, leaving everything.
Still.
Yeah, they left the still because they had it bolted down, right? To use it, right? You can't. It's not portable, right? that next session, they're like, screw that, right? We got to go back and get it, right?
Right,
And they're
right.
like, but there's like 16 armed dudes,
Whoa.
and when they go back, there's a big truck that they're loading all these goods into. We spent the next 3 sessions, right? They planned an ambush to ambush these trucks and these soldiers to get their still back. We called it
Right.
the Battle of the Still. 3 sessions back to back, and it felt like a movie, right? It felt
Right.
not so much like it took 3 sessions to resolve the combat. It
Yeah.
was 3 sessions to plan, implement, get our stuff, get away, all over still.
Did
I'm
their
like, you could build.
did their neighbors just like put their heads down and like, oh, we're not getting involved in this?
Yeah,
Like,
some of the neighbors got captured. Some of
okay.
them got captured and they died in the fight, right, as consequences, right?
Right.
But they got their still back, and they made a bigger enemy out of another faction, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was fantastic because I'm like, is it worth it, right? Because you could build another still.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we built that one, right? And we want that one back.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
We need that still. Yes.
It's so interesting what people get attached to, right?
Yes.
Like, it's literally like a fictional description of a still, and people are like, no, that's ours.
Well, and the deal is they had an inventory. They knew what they got every single part to build that still.
Right.
And there's a session or an adventure or shift where they went to go get those things, right?
Yeah.
So I think as players, they're like, yeah, we got memories attached. It's not just the still, it's all these other things, right? We're gonna go get it, right?
Right.
So.
I'd like to just touch. I mean, we got a couple minutes left, 3 minutes left. I just want to talk about safety for like just a second.
Yeah.
I had a situation come up where there were these like evil, horse-eating worms, and I had a lot of animal lovers at the table. And so I was like, yeah. And I saw, then I'm reading the description of the worms in the monster book, and I'm like, and then when they grab people, they secrete acid. And everyone was like, come on now. And I was like, the horse gets away, guys. The horse,
Yeah.
The horse just gets away, and the worms fight you. And they were like, thank you. And so it doesn't, you don't have to, like, nothing is more, no role, no table is more important than your friends.
Right.
So and really no safety tools are going to help you more than looking out for your friends, watching their reactions, knowing them, caring about them, and just being like, because I would imagine in a setting like that one, it would be very easy to get very dark.
Yeah,
in post-apocalyptic, Poland, and just be like, oh, there's a girl among them. Oh, we'll purchase her for the shack. And get super like ugly dark, and it seems like you've decided not to do that.
Yeah, not to do that. Yeah. I think, and this is a trusted table. These are friends, right? So I'm with you that we have those talks as they come up, and we decide which way we're going, and which is funny, right? Because we didn't do that, but they're cannibals, and we did do that, right?
Right.
It is bizarre what. And it's different from table to table, right? So you got to have those conversations.
Yeah, totally. I totally get, like, I'm up for shooting cannibals. I'm not up for realistic depictions of post-apocalyptic prostitution, like just or forced prostitution where it's like really, really gross. Yeah. Cool. And that this is not me slamming safety tools. I'm just saying they're not the only thing that keep us safe, is what I'm saying.
Right.
An X card can make it easier to bring that up. Or any of the other tools, that the bevy of tools that you can get to that can help keep the game and our friends safe, and keep it like a fun horror movie and not like a traumatic
way. I'm with you. I hear it's a game, and because it says a thing doesn't mean it has to be that thing. We can change that thing, right?
Yep.
We retcon stuff all the time, so
okay, there you go. Interesting. Cool. Cool. Yeah. I mean, because there is a feeling you get when you start to roll on these tables, and you're like, well, the table said so. I can't help it. And some people can even like disclaim like your responsibility and be like, I can't help it. The worm, it secretes acid, and it's got a horse. Like, what do you want to happen? It doesn't. Like,
right. That's what it is.
It's like, no, that is what I want to have happen. Actually, it doesn't. Yes. We don't have like the. Yeah. But it does feel like there is an authority. It can feel like there's an authority telling us to do these things because
Right.
it's on a table, it's in the hex, it's in the whatever. And we can still look out for our friends, even though the table told us that terrible things are happening. So
Right.
cool. Sometimes, yeah, good stuff. I think that's it. Are we done?
Yeah, I think we're at time.
Cool. We got through all our notes. We did well. I didn't even get to.
I know we did do good.
Go.
I'm Jake. You guys have a good morning out there in the world.
Yeah, I'm Judd. Thank you for joining us. And if you're watching this on the YouTubes, thank you for watching. And thank you, Big Bad Online, for asking us to wake up real early.
Yeah, this was good. This
is
was
a lot of fun. Mic is still hot.
Yeah, but we do this on Twitch all the time where the mic is hot.
Yeah. No, definitely.
This is like the after party right here.
Right. I gotta get on Discord, right? Isn't there a?
Yeah, there is. I was gonna, because I'm up now, so I'm like, I'll hop in the Discord, see who's out there, and
yeah, I'll hop on. Is there like a Big Bad 2024 community? Is that?
I'm having to go. I'm gonna grab the email because I think the link is in there.
Okay. All right, my email is down. So let me. And that's a good time to hit my mic. That's fine. That's after the show. You can hit your mic now.